Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering What We Do in the Shadows, Season 5, Episode 8, The Roast. In this episode, I really enjoy that the title of this episode is about, the roast that they're throwing for Laszlo, but also the fact that the Baron gets roasted a couple times. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. This one, I have such mixed feelings about this particular episode because it's like, on the one hand, kind of a really weak premise. The whole thing with Laszlo. At the same time, it's not really about him after not even 10 minutes. We have moved on from Laszlo as the issue. So to another point, I'm sort of like, all right, well, maybe this is fine. I just can't help but laugh that the whole thing begins with him sitting still, and it's 2 solid weeks, I think, is how long they say he has been behaving this way. And Nadja is beginning to get really agitated, and I love the way that this goes. I fully thought that Guillermo was right on the first viewing, and that his theory about how he was looking for a solution to what Guillermo is going through, and the fact that he can't stand defeat has driven him mad. I mean, that's kind of a dramatic way to put it, but that's sort of what he's saying. And I realized upon rewatch that the joke is really everybody thinks that his breakdown, whatever they want to call it, is about them, which is actually a way better joke. I think that this sort of situation is always really remarkable, and there have been a few different things that I think mainly that I have read, but there was one particular book where a situation that is completely unrelated to anybody is happening, and each POV that you see that event from, everybody takes it the wrong way, and they think for sure what's happening is directed at them, but each of them is certain, and it actually wasn't relevant to any of them. And I always really, really love that premise, just because what these people assume tells you a lot about them. First off, the fact that they think it's about them. Secondly, some people will think it's about them and be like, oh, that motherfucker. Some people will be like, oh, it's about me. How lame. I've totally forgotten about that, beef that we had. Some people will be like, oh my God, it's about me. I need to go and talk to them about it. And I you can think it's about you without being totally self-centered as a person. And the direction that you go with your actions tells us everything we need to know about you. So when I was on the rewatch, I sort of thought how this episode could have, in my opinion, been a little bit more interesting with the way that they decided to do this, and everybody behaving as if what's going on with Laszlo is actually about them. But we kind of drop that pretty quickly in favor of everybody agreeing on this roast idea, which Evil Mabel was the one who actually came up with the roast idea. But it wasn't until Colin Robinson suggested it that they actually listened. And you guys, I just feel so bad for Evil Mabel. I know I've said this already in another episode, in terms of how they're not including her, and Nadja doesn't even see her as a real friend or anything. But what I found sort of funny this episode is previously I kind of enjoyed Evil Mabel and found it surprising. Nobody liked her, and all seemed to see her as like kind of a non-entity, basically. And this episode, she fucks up real bad. So I sort of had a moment of like stepping back and being like, oh wait, maybe this is why she sucks, and maybe they're kind of right to be leaving her out of things. I can't tell how much she did this on purpose and not. I feel like she didn't do it on purpose to fuck up Guillermo, because if I remember correctly, she has been wanting to fuck Guillermo, and so I feel like she'd just sort of be more protective of him than otherwise. But I think really the motivation was what she said, like, she's been left out of a joke so many times that she saw a way to mitigate that for somebody else and just did it because she hates that being done to her and wanted to help. And it was, just the wrong call. But what I like too, and I think I've said this previous to this, she has taken the place of Guillermo in some ways. Like, okay, taking the place of him is wrong. That's not accurate. But Guillermo's, what's going on with him has moved on a little bit from him just being the butt of all the jokes about how, like, nobody likes you and they won't accept you. That still happens for sure. But it's really seems like they're sort of letting that go now that he's like transitioning into a vampire asterisk maybe. And now that he's got this like whole vampire hunter thing, and there's another aspect of him that we have learned since the beginning of the series, he is a little bit more, I think he has a little bit more of their respect. And I say a little bit, like a really little bit. So having her kind of be the one that is getting the brunt of these, I really like, and I also think maybe it's on purpose that they just made her sort of an inoffensive, decent person, because that's like, the vamps aren't nice. They're not kind, generous, self-aware people at all. So maybe that's kind of the thing, is that like Evil Mabel seems pretty decent. And the fact that they don't like connect with her or like her at all is like really a reflection on how shitty they are, in combination with just the mere fact of how they treat her. But, I may be reaching on that. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that. So anyway, this is when they jump to the roast itself. And I was really surprised at how quickly we transition from this just being an idea to full on, we are at the roast and everybody is in attendance. I kind of thought the episode would be about planning it and the roast would be at the end. But instead, it's like the first thing that we deal with after establishing why we're doing it. And everybody is here already. Sean is here again, having been, like, they promised to hypnotize him and get him to forget. They're gonna break Sean. It's gonna have to happen. Like, they're doing this to him too much. But the whole thing with the way that they each roast Laszlo. So Nando does the most sort of like traditional type roasting to open things up. Just giving Laszlo himself grief, mentioning people in the audience, giving them grief. Like, he feels pretty much as like the host, right? And then Nadja comes up and Miss T says, I thought the saying that we would have to plan it the whole time. Very glad to have been wrong. Agree. Yeah. When I say that that's what I expected, I don't want you guys thinking I mean that's what I wanted. I just thought that was how it was going to go. And what they decided to do was funny, because it was like, oh, well, we'll just get everybody together and have some people say some shit, which, if I'm not mistaken, is often how things go. Like, people will make a joke at a gathering because they think everybody gets the joke. And the fact that they assumed a bunch about how much every person knew will turn out to be the big problem, you know? So I did like the way that wound up sort of shaking out. But anyway, so Nadja, she goes up there and she does a whole bunch of "You might be a Laszlo Cravensworth." I love the fact that it's not "You might be a Laszlo," because that works too well. That's the same number of syllables as redneck, and that's just, it's too good. We have to say "You might be a Laszlo Cravensworth," which is just so clumsy sounding, and like everybody goes with it in the audience, but it's such a missed opportunity to do it the first way and have it be simple. And I really like that they just had her not do that. One of the things she says, you guys, is if you think coming on a pillow is the same thing as making your wife dinner, you might be a Laszlo Cravensworth. Oh my God, you guys, it's so... And like, you know, I have swallowed my share of cum. I have nothing against it. It's when it's like on another surface that I'm just like, okay, now it's different. Now we're doing a different thing. I can't anymore. That's it. I have like a certain boundary and it's there. Once we have put it on another object, it's off the menu. I'm sorry. It's too late. Anyway, so this, you guys, there is a moment here where fucking Colin gets up. This show is so good at these like painful moments. I feel like it's the exact kind of comedy that I can't take in large doses, like whole shows that are this sort of cringe comedy. I can't do it, you know? It's just overwhelming. I can't, like, for example, rewatch the first season of The Office. I disappear inside my own body. It is absolutely out of the question. But having the little bits of it that they do in this show, it's just the perfect amount. Just a little chef's kiss of a reminder, this is what this guy is like, this person is like, and how that manifests. And I feel like if it were done any other way, if they did it more, I would have struggle getting through this show. That's all. So anyway, he tries to tell this fucking aristocrats joke. Now, if you guys haven't heard this joke, basically the joke of the joke is that it isn't an official script, and it's sort of the kind of joke you adapt heavily. And like any sort of joke that's like, oh, did you hear about the priest and the so-and-so? Like, you can adapt shit with that all you want. If you hear that squeaking, sorry guys, my regular headphones cracked in half the other day, so I'm having to wear my backup ones, and they are so noisy. But what I was saying was, you can adapt any word of mouth sort of joke, right? Like, that's just the nature of them. But the explicit thing with the aristocrats is that the way people alter it is particularly like revealing about the person telling the joke and the audience to whom they are telling it as well. Because what the joke is basically this family comes in and tells this guy, get ready for this amazing family act. They do a series of horrific, sometimes sexual, filthy things, sometimes just straight up like shit and piss filthy. And sometimes it'll be like disturbing, you know, something violent, whatever. And they'll say this thing, they'll do all of these things. And then at the end of the act, with the person who's like the talent scout or whatever, sitting there stunned and horrified, he'll ask, what do you call the act? And they say, the aristocrats. And the joke meaning that they did these like hideous things, and then they named it something that is sort of, you know, incongruous. And that's the joke. And like I said, everybody who tells it, they do it in a slightly different way. And so there's a real personal spin on it, depending on who you hear it from. And it's one of those jokes that's sort of like notorious in comedy circles, that people like to sort of outdo each other with the stuff that they come up with. And there was actually a whole, like, I want to say, like, basically a documentary about the joke itself, where they went from one celebrity to another and asked them if they'd heard the joke and the version that they had heard, and whether or not, like who taught it to them and what varieties of the joke have they heard up until this point in their lives. And it's just this huge thing. And so anyway, that's the background for those who aren't familiar. And because of the joke being so flexible, the point of it basically being that, like, you can do this whatever way you want, it's perfect for somebody like Colin Robinson to fuck up. Because he doesn't have, like, a real easy paced script. He has to sort of make up the things. And so he says them out of order. And you guys, have you ever been around a person who tells jokes in this way? Like, they get shit out of order, and they don't. The smart thing to do is, if you fuck up like this, you drop it, right? And I have seen this myself, where there has been a person who they realize I said the fucking punchline already, and they just go, okay, I've ruined it, never mind. And as much as that's tragic, that's appropriate. This is what you should do, is just be like, all right, never mind, I'm calling an audible, and I no longer get to finish the joke because I just ruined it. But he keeps trying to, like, restart and backtrack and, like, be like, oh, and also there's, like, the family dog that's there, that'll be important later. The worst possible way to try and tell a joke is by, like, making sure people pay attention to certain things. The joke needs to be simple and concise enough that they can't fail to pay attention to the significant thing that will come up later. If you have to, like, qualify, oh, this detail is important later, so remember it, that's no longer a joke. That's a fucking script for a movie or something. You're confusing the issue. Keep it snappy, okay? Let's get this show on the road. So anyway, I also love how the way that they film this is always that we see the beginning of this awkward thing, but then the camera will just pull away and we don't have to watch it all. And we just know that it continues to go on. It's like they did it this way here. And then in the previous episode with maybe the one before that with the campaign, they just have the fast forward button going through it, which was also a really, really clever way to do it. But this, we jump to Nandor again, who is, like, saying something about how, here it is. Look at this. Oh, that's right. Yeah, everybody's fallen asleep because he's draining them. I'm assuming he's draining them on purpose, right? There are times where I'm sort of like, is this just who Colin is? You know, and he, like, tunes in and is like, ooh, yummy, a treat. But that wasn't necessarily what he went in trying to do. But, okay, so the thing with the who knows more about roasting than his beloved Arby's is what he says about Guillermo. And when this guy starts roasting a vampire, you better bring a bun and also some ketchup. And everybody's sort of like, what? And this is when Mabel tells on Guillermo. I don't know how she even knows this information, to be honest. I don't have a problem with her knowing, for the record. I'm just curious, like, did somebody just tell her? She wasn't around when all of that was going down, I don't think. Unless I'm wrong, but I didn't think so. So, yeah, she whispers, and you guys, the way that they film the moment of her telling the Baron is so good, because he just gets this look, like his eyebrows go up, just, and it's like, when I say his eyebrows go up, I don't mean like a surprised way. His eyebrows go up at, like, in a way that would be overacting for any other character, but for him is absolutely on point. The drama of it, the way his eyes, like, bug out of his head, and he slowly turns to Guillermo and stares at him, like, it is so fucking funny. I laughed so hard in that, the way he played. He is so good in, like, he's always fun, but this episode in particular, they had some excellent lines. And this moment when he sees Guillermo go up there, oh my God. We also find out that she told him about his Van Helsing lineage. So the Baron is sitting there and getting very up in his feelings about this whole thing. And Guillermo is doing his more like Craven's worth less speech, but he doesn't really hit. And so when the Baron stands and says he'd like to say a couple words, they immediately kick Guillermo for the Baron's sake. And what is it that Nandor says when he says, the microphone for the Baron, please welcome a man who knows quite a lot about sick burns. And the look again that he gives him. Oh my God. So the Baron, this is great. Look at this festive assembly. All of us gathered here together, chuckling at jokes and silliness and jackanapery. I guess there's only one thing left to say. What is this shit? And they all laugh, like genuine, sincere laughter. You call yourselves vampires. This entire evening has been nothing but a pageant of insipid nonsense. Worshipping at the altar of your own mediocre frivolity. A jester's hollow dance. And who's laughing? And somebody cheers and he just sends that guy flying into a wall. He says vampires are supposed to host blood orgies and slaughter circles. You have all gone soft. You even invited humans to this asinine affair. All right, you know what? Sean is cool. He's a good time. I take that one back. But everything else is a fucking embarrassment to the very word vampire. And when Nandor explains we were just trying to cheer up Laszlo, vampires do not need cheering up. And he says it in the voice. The whole place goes dark for a second. Sparks fall from the ceiling and his eyes glow red. And he explains that vampires are not supposed to be cheerful. They are supposed to brood and plan murders. And the worst part, I find out only tonight, that you have all been keeping secrets around here, have you not? I know you have been harboring a vampire killer, and right here under your own, and I love Guillermo like very slowly edging up in his seat, who in fact tried to kill me. And Nandor, attempting to buy some time, what do you mean? And he says, don't insult my intelligence. So he says it with his accent, you know. I think it's intelligence. I don't know. But anyway, at this point, Guillermo runs and he turns into a bat and flies after him. It is a really fun gesture that he makes to turn into a bat as well. Just overall, absolute like 11 out of 10 performance from this guy. I love the way he says jackanapery. Like, just go back and just rewatch this whole scene and just focus on how much he fucking is loving every second of this role. He is having such a great time. And I have to imagine it is super fun. So then we have the fight between him and Guillermo, which goes on for quite a while. He is, picking up Guillermo and choking him. Guillermo is stabbing him with various wooden objects. And, it's all the middle of the night. But what I found fun was that Guillermo, he runs. But instead of heading just out into the city at random, he waits for the Baron to follow and then doubles back and goes back into the house. And I was sort of surprised by that, but I felt like it might be actually a pretty good move in terms of just what nobody is going to expect. Like, you would try and really get away, right? But it does not fool the Baron, So I love too, the Baron walks out and both Nandor and Nadja are holding on to his robe. I'm pretty certain that those are little dummies that are dressed to look like them. And even knowing that was still really, really funny. So at this point, the two of them are literally chasing each other around the house, like around the outside, crawling up and over everything. And they are trying to talk the Baron down from continuing to go after Guillermo, because the reason the Baron is basically taking it as like a given that he's going to win this fight. And they have to be like, hey dude, no offense, don't take this the wrong way, but he's a vampire killer though. So like, it's possible you don't come out of this just fine. Just a little, for instance, that you should consider. So what they eventually do is they trap each of them in a different way. They trap they trap Guillermo first by pretending that they have the Baron in this bag and that he's like hurt, and maybe if Guillermo were to help him, he would forgive him, which, sure. And of course, Guillermo comes forward, they tase him, and he gets brought inside and tied to a chair. And then the other one is they they succeed in capturing the Baron by simply pretending that they have Guillermo and that he's free to kill him. That, okay, go ahead, I guess. Like, not everything always works out. And guys, I really do like this method. I like the concept of just each of them having completely different reactions. And here's Guillermo just hoping to be like forgiven, and fat chance, bud, super duper not happening. So basically what happens is, in the end, Guillermo, we jump to this moment where we have Nandor saying, like, okay, both of you have got to understand. First of all, to the Baron, we need to review this. You agree that when Guillermo opened the door and fried you with the sun, he did not know that you were inside at the time. I do. Great. And Guillermo, you accept, even though it was an accident, that the Baron has every right to be very mad at the fact that he got fried by the sun. And Guillermo says, I do. The Baron says, I will accept your apology if you will accept the fact that I'm still going to kill you. And what follows is one of my personal favorite line deliveries and lines of the show ever. Nandor says, Guillermo, he is trying to meet you in the middle here. And the Baron says, it's like he doesn't even want this to be resolved by my killing him. You guys, I did not do that line justice in the least, but fuck, he delivers it so well. I watched this episode twice, and on the second time, I laughed just as hard because I had like forgotten the line, and it was so well done. And there's just enough of a pause that it seems like the end of the sentence. Like, it's so good. I love this Baron so much. I was so surprised by the way things go, you guys, because in the end, spoilers, Guillermo burns this Baron again. And I was thinking throughout this whole episode how it seemed probably to this actor who, from what I understand, often plays under really, really heavy makeup. He's extremely tall and really, really thin, so you can do a lot of makeup on him, and that brings him out to looking average size, instead of a lot of people who, if they were wearing that kind of makeup, their whole look would be like out of proportion, and it would be very clear they're wearing makeup. He can kind of look rather natural in it. So he does that kind of thing a lot. And I was sort of thinking to myself that probably getting him back to his normal look of just, this guy in this wig is a huge relief to their budget because they don't have to do this intense, heavy makeup every time he's on screen. And maybe that's why they brought him back to looking like himself, was because they couldn't afford to keep doing that. And then by the end of this episode, he gets fried again and he's right back in that makeup. And I was like, well, there goes that theory. I should have realized that what it was they were like, oh yeah, let's take him out of that look so that we can put him into that look in a truly spectacular fashion later. So anyway, that was an aside because that's later on. But Nandor, he leaves to get some blood because he initially orders it and forgets that Guillermo is tied to a chair and cannot get it. And while he's gone, Guillermo says that he has found a way to renounce his vampire hunter lineage. And the Baron is like, the fuck you did. And as soon as Nadja realizes the direction that Guillermo is going in terms of what he is about to tell this guy, she's like, hey, buddy, maybe that's not a great idea. But Guillermo goes for it anyway and tells this dude that he has been turned, that he went to somebody other than Nandor for it, like the whole thing. And what I have really enjoyed is the fact that every time he tells a vamp what he did and asks, what do you think Nandor will do? I think that without fail, they have always said, probably kill you and then himself. I just really do think that's funny that everybody, it's like, you know, we know exactly how this is going to go and it's not going to be pretty, my friend. But anyway, so he tells the Baron this, who is horrified, but also kind of impressed. Like, you know, oh my God, I forgot the fact that Guillermo says it was that vampire named Derek. And he says it in a way that, you know, takes for granted that the Baron knows who he means. And for a second, I was like, the only time the Baron ever met him was like at Nandor's wedding, right? But no, it was like the previous episode or the one before that when he tries to double turn somebody. Yeah, Guillermo tries to call this sticky, and he says, I think this is more than just sticky. It's a devastation, a violation, a humiliation, a shame from which neither you nor Nandor shall ever recover. And Guillermo says, that's why I haven't told him. And I would appreciate it if none of you would tell him either. Which, yeah, I liked the acknowledgement that Evil Mabel is standing there, because there goes a gal who is not good at keeping a secret. And of course, the first thing that she says is how good she is at keeping a secret, which some of the people who are worst at keeping secrets really think they're good at that shit. Did you ever notice that? Have you guys seen this before? It is really remarkable. But the way that she says it, again, I was just so unsure. Am I supposed to think that she outed Guillermo on purpose, or that she's just truly unaware of how bad she is at this? I kind of think it's that one, actually. That she doesn't even really consider the fact that she's the cause of all of this as being her fault. Like, she just, you know, well, Guillermo, you did do the thing, and so gotta take your medicine, you know. But anyway, so the Baron is basically like, I mean, I would definitely not tell him, but it's coming out eventually. Oh my God, Colin's saying I would like to be excluded, actually, explicitly. Guillermo, you all have much graver matters to discuss here, and I want no part of what might transpire if, and he says if, and Nandor comes in at that very moment, with a flat Pepsi for Guillermo. He kind of gets it right. That's not too bad. It could be a lot worse. So this is when they announce that they've called a truce, and the Baron says, I will not be the one to take this familiar's life tonight, and gives Guillermo this very, very significant look. So this is the point at which Guillermo and the Baron have their little heart-to-heart right in front of the door. And he says it's going to come out eventually and it will be best if he hears it from you. And he gets his ass fried again. And then when we jump to the talking heads, everybody is saying, well, the Baron, is basically going to wake up and track down Guillermo and definitely fucking kill him. Like, for sure. So I'm like thinking, as I'm watching this, I had sort of lost track of the time. And I thought that was where the episode was going to end, that we were just like on a cliffhanger, and then we were going to come back to the Baron chasing Guillermo, and that was going to be like the next episode was just him sort of hiding. But no, we're only like 20 minutes into the episode. There's still another 8 minutes to go. I'm trying to see the time here. This is hard to see. But yeah, so immediately the Baron says, "Where's Guillermo?" And Laszlo, when he asks Nandor first, and Nandor says, "Look, I know that he has almost killed you twice, and he did massacre an entire theater of vampires." The Baron immediately, "Wait, what?" And Nandor just smooth sails right on past that. But he did so to defend his master. Whatever Guillermo's flaws may be, he has always been loyal to me. Has he? Yes, Baron. Has he, though? Yes, Baron, he has. You are certain of? Yes, I am. Well, I would just say that it's complicated, but we can discuss this further after I kill him. Yes? Now, where would he run? And Laszlo just tells him straight up, he isn't here, he's in the tool shed. That's where he goes to hide and wank. Guys, tell me what you think. Did Laszlo say this explicitly because he knew that the Baron would have a decoy to kill and that it would just satisfy him for the time being? He says, why delay the inevitable, when they ask him why he did it. So I think it is supposed to be that he didn't care about Guillermo and was about to let him die. But a part of me sort of thought he was just like, oh yeah, that's probably like, he'll run into that weird creature and then we'll be able to have this dude out of our hair for the time being. So then we have the Baron carrying in Guillermo's body and dumping him on the floor. And as soon as I saw him, I was like, this dude looks off. What's up? What's on his face? Like, you could see that there was something wrong with it. And it could have been that it was bruised, but it didn't look bruised the last time you saw him. And pretty quickly we get this, like, okay, this dude just straight up looks wrong. I love everybody gathered around Guillermo's body and the Baron saying, okay, now I'm starting to feel a little bad. But on the bright side, he was just a familiar. He was not just a familiar. He was my bodyguard. He was the best man at my wedding. He was my friend. And I wish Guillermo had been there to actually hear that. Because it's like the only thing he wanted in his life. And he missed it. I really wish that, like, I want him to, like, go back and watch this footage that the camera people, like, in the universe, and see that and just be like, oh my God, he finally said it, that we're friends. So she calls Laszlo to help carry Guillermo out. And, oh no, you know what? I was theorizing that he did this on purpose to, like, fake out the Baron, but he comes out and says that's not Gizmo right in front of the Baron. So it makes no sense that he would try and, like, fuck him around and give him a fake if he's just going to immediately then say that isn't the guy that you thought. That wouldn't make any sense. So yeah, he just straight up did not care whether Guillermo died or not. Oh, what a bummer. And when they all argue about whether or not it's really Guillermo, he cuts up the, like, center of Guillermo's body and yanks out a weird, like, he calls it gills, but I don't know how you know those are what those are. But yeah, just pulls out a bunch of parts like an egg sac and everything. And is like, yeah, no, that's definitely not him. And his eyes pop out in this crazy way that's really like, I think it's all CGI, but it looks pretty good. So this is when the Baron says, you know what? I will let him go. I was going on and on about all of you and how you've gone soft. Deep down, it is I who have gone soft. And they all argue with him, and he stops them and says, guys, let's get real for a sec. I live in the suburbs of New Jersey in a 2-bedroom craftsman with a breakfast nook. None of my neighbors fear me. I have a dog. And, just the whole way that he talks about this. I loved this so much because you guys, the whole we're fucking vampires, we're supposed to brood and murder people and be fucking tough badasses and whatever. This is the kind of speech that always winds up coming out of some vampire in any long-running vampire series. You're always going to have vamps that are sort of fundamentalists about how vampires should behave and who look down on vampires who are looking for acceptance from human beings or who are trying to curb the appetites of other vampires. And in True Blood, this was a particular, there was basically a vampire supremacist movement that was not in the Sookie books. And I really enjoy the subversion of this, that the Baron gets super angry and then comes back around and realizes I was just feeling self-conscious, actually. I was talking some shit that I shouldn't have been because that was about me. What a great way to handle it. And when he says that he has a dog, they show him carrying the fire extinguisher for the hellhound's poops because its poops are on fire, and that I thought was actually a pretty great joke. And what about the sire? 2 ancient legendary vampires. At this point, we are more like roommates than roommates who viciously murder humans together, It can be lonely, this American dream. So at this point, these little creatures are coming out of this fake Guillermo's chest cavity. And the Baron takes them home and is playing with them. And basically it's they're his babies. And it's so creepy and awful. I really hate these creatures, you guys. The fucking toads with hair was as far as I could go. And I'm sorry, but y'all have lost me on the rest of it. So we jump then to Nandor, staring out the window. I can't believe I'll never see Guillermo again. I hope he is okay out there. And I love him he's looking out this window and then, pretty sure I told him to dust here. He turns and he goes to get into his coffin, and Guillermo was inside it. And he says, I thought this would be the last place the Baron would look. And I was like, oh, that's actually a really good call. Yeah. So, of course, then we have this goofy moment where Nandor is like, how do I know you're the real Guillermo? And he tells him his last name, saying but anybody would know that. And he's like, would they? How does Guillermo do my hair on formal occasions? Half up, half down, also known as half down, half up. So close. I was looking for Saratoga split. And Guillermo says, I should have known that one. Why? Why should you have known that one? And then he says, the first day Guillermo became my familiar, he gave me a card. What did that card say? And it said, to be a vampire is my dream. To be your familiar will be my honor. And you see Nandor get all emotional. And he then says, close enough. You guys, I think we're going to reach a point where Nandor realizes that he cares enough about Guillermo that he wants to turn him now. And this is going to be what causes Guillermo to have to, like, come clean. He just gets a real look on his face. Like, you know, oh my gosh. And when Guillermo's like, how did you know to ask that? He says, I know you better than anybody. Enough to know when you've been keeping a little secret from me. And Guillermo naturally assumes the worst and that he's talking about becoming a vampire. I love the look that he gives the camera. Like, oh, shit. And then Nandor sits up. And he says, is there something you'd like to tell me? Long pause. You made a fart in my coffin, didn't you? And Guillermo says, I made a fart in your coffin. Very softly. You guys, do you think he really did? I think he probably really did. Bet I would. It'd be really bad to fart inside of a coffin. That would be a real hotbox situation. And Nandor says, see, I know you better than anyone. And boops him on the nose. I'm saying, just the affection that he is showing him, we have not seen before from Nandor. It hasn't happened. So this feels like it's a real... it's a real moment. So then we get the final scene of Nadja and Laszlo. I can't believe that I kind of danced past what Nadja and Nandor were doing to try and, like, get him cheered up again, because what is wrong with me? How did I miss that? Guillermo, the reason I think that I thought Guillermo was right about it being about him is because he's the only one that Laszlo calls by name. He, like, opens his eyes in a wider and looks up and says Gizmo. And then immediately, like, goes away again. But it was more than anybody else had gotten out of him. So I sort of was like, oh, maybe he's right about that. But, Nadja says that his, like, sex drive is all fucked up and that we're down to 16 fucks a week. Which, I mean, I guess that's that vampire pussy. Because I don't think I could take that. I think that might be too much for me. And damn, girl. And then Nandor follows up with, like, we're down to 3. And she just, like, very compassionately reaches out and, like, pats his hand. Really, really good moment. But then we get this moment where she comes in dressed up like a construction worker, doing a very porny sort of, like, oh, I'm trying to hammer these rivets, is what she says. And he pays absolutely no attention at all. And then Nandor comes in and says, oh, look, I found this box full of, like, old ships and porn. And that was pretty much my favorite. I really, really loved that joke. But, yeah, sorry, guys. I can't believe that I left that out. So Nadja is saying, I can't keep track of whatever the fork is going on around here, but I did find a new home for those disgusting Guillermo toads. And this is when we jump back to the Baron. And he says that now that when he goes out, his vampires or his neighbors are afraid of him. So I guess I'm terrifying it again. It can be beautiful, this eternal existence. I have to mention, considering that he said this, that Nadja at one point, when, like, Nandor is saying the Baron's going to kill all of us, Nadja says, would it be so terrible if he did kill us. To which Nandor's like, whoa, really? And she just says, I'm just going through some stuff. But anyway, I forgot about the Baron flushing one down the toilet. That thing was too big. So finally, Nadja sits in front of Laszlo. And the thing that he has said repeatedly all episode is, yes, very good, thank you. Thank you. And she's trying to get through to him and saying, is it something I've done? Is it this hex that I've been cursed with that hangs all around me, made me in your eyes like an uggo or something? And he says, oh yes, that's it. And wakes from his stupor. And of course, it sounds like he's saying, yes, you are an uggo. He says, despite the frequent interruptions, I've sat here trying to decide if I should organize my books alphabetically or by author or by title. And when she's like, it's been 3 weeks, he says, time well spent, I believe. And it's author. Oh, God. When he says, like, you'll be pleased to know, I think, or like, good news to it. Yeah, you'll be pleased to know, author. First thought, best thought. Have I missed anything good? And she says no. And then just laughs and points at him and says, this guy. I really thought she'd be a lot more angry. I really did. Like, I respect that she's not, and good for you, girl. And considering things like how long they have all been alive, I suppose that probably 3 weeks, I think it is total, doesn't even probably seem like that long. But I mean, my God, you couldn't just like tune back in for a moment to tell us that's what you're struggling to decide on, guy? Come on. But anyway, so then we go to credits, and I forget what the like brief after credits scene is here, because there is always one in every episode. Oh, is there not one? I'm watching it now, waiting for it to pop up, and usually it has by now, and it's not happening. Maybe that's why I didn't remember, because they didn't even do one this episode. Yeah, I guess not. But anyway, so yeah, that I like I said, I thought the premise of it was like kind of weak, but the way that things worked out, so now literally everybody knows about this except for Nandor. I'm really curious how he's going to take it, because I have no doubt that however this information gets out, he will never think that everyone knew before him. And I have no doubt that that part will come out. And I don't know how he will react to that. Will that be part of what sort of calms him down? Will that be what makes it worse and even more humiliating? Like, you know, I don't know what he will think about that part. And I can't help but wonder if like the Baron isn't just going to snap and tell on Guillermo after all, because at this point, why wouldn't you? Just go ahead, you know? He definitely has something to hold over his head anyway. So I'm going to wrap up, but yeah, fun episode overall. Glad I didn't have any more of the hybrid creatures to deal with, because I hate them so much. And I hope that you guys are enjoying the coverage. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.